The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello everybody, and welcome to the third and final webinar as part of this Agile webinar series. And today I'm joined by Jan-Jaap Kanigheter from Syska, and he is going to be presenting Improve Your Flexibility by Mastering Different Ways of Testing. And if you want to get involved in the discussion following this webinar, you can do so over on Test Huddle. And I'm going to share with you a link now to this discussion. And this link here will appear in your chat box. And if you follow that link directly after the webinar, you can share your views with Jan-Jaap, and you can give us some feedback, ask questions, and just get involved in the discussion, really. So now I'm going to hand you over to Jan-Jaap. Hello, Jan-Jaap.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to this webinar. And I'll take over the screen, and if everything works the way it should work, and normally it does, when I attend myself, then you see my screen right now. Okay, welcome everybody to this webinar. Like Darak said, my name is Jan-Jaap Kanigheter. I'm Vice President of Syska. I'm not going to introduce myself any further. If you want to know more about me, please check my LinkedIn profile. We have some resources coming with this webinar. You can find them on www.syska.com/Eurostar. You don't need a password for it. You can find the slides over there. You can find a white paper, and you can find some relevant articles over there. The agenda. I planned to talk for about I planned to talk maximum 30 minutes and then go to the discussion. First, I will discuss with you the influence of Agile on testing and the influence on our attitude as a tester. Then I will talk about integrating different ways of testing in Scrum, because we have to apply different ways of testing, we have to master them, and then the consequences for the tester. But first of all, we're going to do a poll, and it's going to be hosted by Darak, and he's going to launch the poll now.
You should see the poll now, everybody. It'll appear on your screen. And please tick the boxes that apply to you.
Yeah, which of the following ways of testing do you master? Detailed scripting, session-based testing, bug hunts, test tours, or freestyle exploratory testing. And well, they're slightly different as I expected it to be. You can choose as much as you like, as much checkboxes as you like, so you can choose 1 or 2 or even 5 different. And by now 2/3 has voted, and we're still getting more votes, so wait a bit longer. But the increase is dropping now, as I see. So, Dora, could you please share the results with the people?
Okay, I'm just going to close the poll now, and I'm going to share the results.
Well, the outcome is slightly different than I expected it to be. Maybe that's because I'm a Dutchman, and in the Netherlands, scripted testing is very popular. Freestyle exploratory testing is the highest. I'm quite happy with that, actually. So, but test tours get quite less. And session-based testing, I expected that to be the second. So, I will have to change my presentation slightly, not the sheet, but my analysis later on. I will use these figures later. So could you turn to my screen again, and then we go on with the presentation, Darak?
I will indeed.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for attending to the poll. I have to make this part of the screen active. First, I want to look with you to the influence of Agile on testing. For myself, I have about 20 years of experience in testing. Well, I started in testing 20 years ago, and so I've seen different developments in testing and system development that influence testing, and I think Agile is by far the most influential development that influenced testing. In my opinion, the influences are the following. First, most of us are not in a dedicated test team anymore, and this has a huge impact on our behavior and also on the behavior of other people, of other stakeholders in the projects, because we have shared goals and responsibilities. If we're not successful as a tester, the developer, the designer, the product owner, the user are also not successful, and the other way around. If the developer is not successful, it's also due to us, and that has a huge impact on our attitude towards the developer, the designer, etc. Third, well, actually, we work in sprints, not these long test phases anymore that takes weeks or even months, but we have to deliver within 2 weeks, so very short lead times, and we have to deliver small parts. Another thing is that we also do other tasks beside testing, but others are also doing our tasks as well. So we have to involve others in testing, but we also have to be able to do different work. And there the T-shaped tester or even the P-shaped tester became popular. Another thing is that we do much more regression testing. We do not only test within the sprint, but we also test the features that has been built in sprints before. And that means a lot of regression testing, and due to that, a lot of automation. You cannot do good Agile without test automation, in my opinion. So test automation became mature in the age of Agile. We have less or even no time for preparation, and that means that brings that we have to apply different ways of testing compared to, let's say, 5 or 10 years ago. Well, like I said, I'm from the Netherlands, and in the Netherlands detailed scripting is very popular, but it is in most Agile projects not applicable anymore. So we have to look for different ways of testing. And we have less or no documentation available, so we have to look for other sources. And last but not least, maybe for this group everybody understands the difference between testing and checking, but this brilliant insight brought to us by Michael Bolton. If you don't know the difference, please check his blogs about it, Testing and Checking Michael Bolton, and you will get to the right blog. But not every tester is understanding this difference, and that while most of our clients, in most of our projects, conformance checking is not what is asked from us. More goal-oriented testing is asked. Is this the right solution for the right organization? Does it solve the problem of the user? Those questions become more important than is this system in line with the requirements. I think these are the main influences of Agile testing, and the consequences of these are twofold. On one hand, we have consequences on our attitude, and the other consequence we have is on the way of testing. Let's first look at the consequences of Agile on our attitude, and I want to explain that using the Agile Manifesto. I suppose everybody is familiar with the Agile Manifesto. But let's look at the details of it. The first statement in the Agile Manifesto is that individuals and interaction go over processes and tools. So that means for a tester that he should not stick to one method or stick to the handbook, which is in use by the organization. And I still see a lot of people who say, when I test, I use method X, or when I test, I use this way of working. I think you have to test, the way of testing should be in line with the organization, with the system, with the situation at hand. So you have to choose the best way of testing in a given situation. Second statement is working software over comprehensive documentation, so we don't make detailed test scripts anymore. Maybe there are some exceptions, and I'm sure there are some exceptions, but we have to focus more on actual test execution. And the customer collaboration goes over contract negotiation. That means that we have to involve the customer in our testing. And not every way of testing enables that. So in some projects we have to use ways of testing which enables us to involve the customer. And the last one, respond to change over following the plan. Well, make no or a very small plan, a very thin plan. Don't make the 20, 40 pages plans we used to make. And again, don't stick to the method. So if you draw the conclusion, and you probably know already the conclusion, the attitude, the consequences of Agile attitude is that we became much more flexible. But it also has consequences on the way we test. We have to integrate different ways of testing in Scrum. And if we look at different ways of testing, we see two main streams, or schools, or some people say even camps fighting each other. And these two main streams, or schools I will call them, are scripted testing and exploratory testing. Scripted testing, well known, one of the main characteristics of scripted testing is that there are well-defined phases and that of testing, so planning, preparation, execution and closure, and that you do the preparation before you actually start testing. While exploratory testing, these different phases, these different activities are run in parallel. So the learning, the test design, test execution, test result interpretation, the analysis of the results are run in parallel, and the tester has much more freedom compared to exploratory testing. And now something happens with my connection, and I've got no idea what it is. Can you still hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear there, Jan. Yep.
Okay. Maybe there's something wrong with my computer. I will continue by just talking, and I hope I will get back my computer later. I've got no idea what happens here. If we see these two different ways of testing, so scripted testing and exploratory testing, I'm trying to get back my screen, but I don't have a screen anymore. If we have these two different ways of testing, they're really the most extreme forms on a continuum. Some people say you have to do or scripted testing or you have to do exploratory testing, and I do not agree with that. I think that there are intermediate forms, and you sometimes have to use scripted testing and you sometimes have to use exploratory testing. I've got no idea what happens with my computer.
Yeah, and yep,
what you might something wrong.
Sorry for interrupting you. What you might need to do is just switch off the screen, and on your control panel there on the far left-hand side, there's a little icon there for turning off the screen, and if you turn it back on again, it should reset the screen sharing issue.
Well, I've got a black screen right now, so that's okay. I got back my screen. Do you see the sheet?
I can see your slide deck here now. We just need to open up the presentation mode.
Okay.
And now we can see your slide again.
Okay. Then I continue. Okay.
And apologies, guys, for interrupting there. We're back in action.
Okay, we're back in action. You see a slide now with 6 different ways of testing, from detailed scripting, global scripting. Well, you saw them in the poll. And like I said, some ways of testing are really extreme on the scripted testing side, and some are really on the exploratory testing side, but there are also intermediate forms. And why did we put these 6 on the screen, on the continuum? Because we're quite familiar with them, me and some colleagues, and we know they work pretty well in different projects. But this is not the whole story. If you have other ways of testing, please let me know, and you can put your own ways of testing on this continuum. But how do we apply these different ways of testing in Scrum? Well, I guess everybody is familiar with this picture in which the different activities of Scrum, you can see the different activities of Scrum. So I'm not gonna tell you very much about this, but I'm gonna ask the question, how do we apply detailed scripting and global scripting in Scrum? There are people who say you cannot apply detailed scripting in Scrum. I don't agree with that. I agree that it's the least applicable one. But a couple of weeks ago I was at the tech services department in the Netherlands, and they were building this very complex system with very detailed calculations. The business rules of these calculations are fixed. They're in the law actually, so for this particular system we could use detailed scripting in Scrum. But how do you apply it? Well, here you have the Agile activities again. And you could start with a master test plan. But a warning here. We used to make master test plans of 20+ pages thick. A couple of weeks ago I saw this old master test plan which was over 40 pages. I think nobody read what I have wrote there. I think we can make a master test plan answering some questions like what are the biggest risks of this project, what are the non-functionals which could be relevant for this system in a document of 2, 3, maybe 4 pages. And if I may give you an advice, don't make it in Word. Nobody likes to read documents in Word. Make a PowerPoint. A master test plan is meant for communication purposes. Take this mind map, go to the manager or go to the developer or the product owner or whoever you want to tell about what you're going to test, how you're going to test, and just present it. It's much more effective than making this detailed plan in Word. Well, the second part of Scrum is the refinement and the planning. During the refinement and planning, we decide which way of testing is the best applicable. And when I say this, I say something really important, because that means that we are able to apply all 6 forms of testing, or maybe 5 or 4, but you cannot be the most successful, the most flexible and the best tester on earth if you only can apply 1 or 2 ways of testing. So we have to be able to apply them all. And we also have to decide when, which way of testing is the best way of testing. Of course you can be wrong, but if you don't know the different ways of testing, you can't apply them. And during the refinement and planning, we also make a 1-page test plan. 1 page for each sprint, telling you the risks of this particular sprint, the approach you're going to use, the non-functionals, relevant, other things. If you want to know more about the 1-page test plan, please read the book Agile Testing by Lisa Crispin and Janet Gregory. And then how do we apply this detailed scripting during the sprint? Well, like I said, with detailed scripting, the preparation happens before the execution. So you see a little waterfall during the sprint. And I know this is not in line with the theory. But in practice we can use detailed scripting in some, maybe 5 or at least under 10% of the sprints we can use detailed scripting, and in those projects we will first do the preparation, then the execution. And then the RNA. RNA stands for deciding which test cases will be in the regression test set, that's the R for, and then we automate this, these test cases. As you can see, I will pointed with my mouse, the RNA is outside of the sprint, and I know in theory this is not right. Normally we should build the regression test set and automate it within the sprint. I rarely see this happen in practice. In most of the projects I've seen, we don't have time on the last 2 or 3 days to decide which of the test cases will be selected for a regression test set and then automate them. I also see a lot of projects who have 2 or 3 days in between sessions. So after the session review and the next sprint, there is 2 or 3 days in which you can do different things. And in those projects, the build and the regression set and the automation of it can be done at that moment. And then we integrate it into the big regression test set, which will be used in the next sprint. The session-based testing and bug hunts, how do we apply those in Scrum? Well, first some characteristics of session-based testing and bug hunts. They're both done in sessions. Normally, in session-based testing, sessions are quite small, 1 to 1.5 hours, while with bug hunts, 2, 3 hours, even half a day. With session-based testing, the sessions are executed, are done by testers, while with bug hunts, you involve others into the testing by letting them involve in the bug hunt. So users, developers can be part of a bug hunt. Both session-based testing and bug hunts are managed by the use of test charters. Every test session or every hunt, every pair who's in a hunt, has a different goal, has a different mission, a test mission. What information do you need to know for this, need to get during this test session? And maybe you have some test ideas. I could test this, I could test that, etc., etc. We take good session notes because after 1.5 hours of testing, we don't know the details anymore from the start, and we have a debrief at the end. How do we apply that? Again, the Scrum activities. The master test planning, the decision how to test this sprint, and the one-page test plan is not different from detailed scripting and global scripting. Why is that? Because we take this decision at that moment in time, so over here, so before we do the same things. How does the activities look during the sprint? Well, actually, as you can see, a part of the making of the test charters, which is a kind of preparation, less preparation than during detailed testing, is done before the sprint. I've seen numerous testers who take empty white blanco test charters with them to a refinement session or to a planning session. And during that session, they hear something and they think, hey, this could be a good test mission, and they write it down immediately. Hey, this could be a good test idea, and they write it down on the sheets, on the test charters. So the preparation and the making of the test charters already start before the sprint. And well, as we can see, we make more test charters, we update these test charters, but we begin with test sessions right away. First day of the sprint, first test session. At the end of the sprint, you will probably have 3 or 4 days of test sessions at these days. And maybe more people are involved in testing and they can use the test scripts, the test charters, sorry, made by the tester. Here again we see that the regression set, the choosing which test case will be in the regression test set and the automation of it mostly is done in practice after the sprint, maybe in this extra time. How do we use exploratory testing and test stories in Scrum? Well, first, exploratory testing has got a lot of freedom in itself. You need one test case and you just start testing, and based on what you see, you decide what your next test case is going to be, but you don't have a set of test cases available or something like that. So during exploratory testing, you have a lot of freedom, and not every tester can handle it. Maybe it's due to the Dutch situation. I saw that most of the attendees have experienced master exploratory testing. That's not the situation in the Netherlands. And handling this freedom is a point here. So James Whittaker came up with the idea of test tours. And a test tour is not a test script, is not a test charter, but gives some guidance to the tester. And some examples of these tours are, for instance, the data tour, where you test the handling of data, the create, read, update, delete. The process tour, in which you look whether the application supports the work processes in your organization. The feature tour are all features in the application and do they work properly. One I like very much is the bad parts tour. Bugs tend to cluster together. I think it's cozy somewhere in the application, and there are most of the bugs. So if you find bugs in a certain part of the system, go deeper on that part. And the last one I want to mention I did last year is the claims tour, to see whether the claims made by the commercial department of the organization are met. And I used this tour last year during a test project, and I came up with test ideas which I would otherwise never have had. So how do we apply test tours and exploratory testing in Scrum? Well, again, it looks like the master test planning, decision to test, and the one-page test plan is the same, but I added here tours. The moment you decide to do test tours, you also have to look which tours are most applicable for this particular sprint. And then, before we saw that preparation was blue and execution was yellow. With test tours and exploratory testing, you start with execution. But that doesn't mean you don't document anything. During the execution, you decide which test cases will be part of the regression test set, and you document these test cases well. So the building of the regression test set is done in parallel together, and the automation of it together with the execution. And you can't start earlier than the start of the sprint, but again, you could build the regression test set or end the building of the regression test set maybe after the sprint. Okay, I'm 2.5 minutes behind, so we'll be a bit later. I hope that's not a problem for you. But what does this mean for the individual tester? And I will end with a personal note. I asked you to say which of the following ways of testing do you master? Which of these ways of testing do you know and can you apply? And none of these had 100%. Some were pretty low. Test tours was pretty low, and to my surprise, session-based testing was pretty low. Of course, you should not have a personal favorite, but of course I have myself as well. And session-based testing became my personal favorite. But nevertheless, I think that a real professional tester, a tester who is really flexible, masters, well, at least 4 of these. Suppose that you master only 2 of these ways of testing. And maybe you should go back in your mind to your last sprint. Are you certain that the way you've tested in the last sprint or the sprint before is the best way, the most optimal way, if you would take all ways of testing into consideration? So yes, I think that a professional tester masters different ways of testing, and why not all 6, so he or she can test in an optimal way all the time. I have 20 years of, I started testing 20 years ago, and when I started testing, I was taught testing in a very scripted way, and I thought that was testing. And After years and years of experience in testing, I found out my view on testing is too narrow. There's more to testing, and even with 10 years of experience, I have to learn new ways of testing. The world has changed, we have to change with it, no matter how much experience you have. So for, at least in the Dutch situation, but I think that also counts for other countries, this change ahead for you personally. And what do you have to do? Well, I don't know in your situation. I can only tell you what I did. For me, learning a new way of testing starts with reading. It starts with learning, starts with reading blogs, go to a conference, go to a workshop about test tours, about exploratory testing, whatever. But that's, well, very much theory. A very important step for me is just do a pilot. Choose a day, choose a time, block your agenda and say, well, in my situation, go do an exploratory testing session without any preparation for this part of the system which is unknown to you. And I can still remember the first time I did that, and I didn't feel very comfortable with it. I was very insecure because I did not have the guidance of my test scripts. And but I had to do that pilot to feel that and to think about it and to say, okay, maybe I should react this way or read more, learn more. And then for me there comes the GDI moment, the just do it moment. Within your project, say this part of the system I'm going to test this using a bug hunt. This part of the system I'm going to test using test tours. And it's not anymore a pilot, it's an integrated part of my testing. Just do it, take the step, go there. And something that helped me a lot is peering. There are more people out there who have to learn new ways of testing. Of course their project is different, their organization is different, their system is different, but sharing your fears, your thoughts, your learnings, your the things that went good with other people is something that's great. Like I said, I want to end with a personal note. I said I started in testing 20 years ago, but I do not have 20 years of experience in testing. Why? Well, let me first tell you how I started with testing. It was in a very unstructured way, but it was fun. It was a great thing to do. Just check whether it's going to work. Well, check means something else right now. Test whether it's going to work, see what was going wrong, etc. And by the time everything was okay, I could go to the next part of the system. This was fun. And it turned out there are organizations specialized in this. Wow, great. So, and then I came into these organizations, these test consultancy firms, and it taught me how to do testing in a structured way. And well, I learned it, did my exams on it, etc. I got my certifications, and started to apply that way of testing, highly detailed scripting. And after a while I found out that I was actually not tester, but I was fighting with documents. I was reading documents, I was writing documents, I was reviewing documents, I was rereading documents, I was updating documents. Where was the testing part? Well, there was only a part of my time. That was the fun part. So I didn't like testing that much. And after about 10 years I left testing I started to do quality assurance, software process improvement, and also requirements analysis and management. Great occupation, by the way, requirements analysis and management. But you can leave testing, but if you're a real tester, testing never leaves you. So I was dragged in, thank you very much, into testing again, and I found out these new cool ways of testing, exploratory testing, session-based testing, etc., etc., which was much more energetic, which was much more fun. Of course you have to do some documentation, now and then you have to read documents, but the balance between doing and documenting was different now. So everybody, and I know this especially for the Dutch situation at hand, everybody who is still in the old way of testing, there is a new world out there. I have made this change. It's not easy, but I'm gonna promise you it's fun over there. We'll continue the discussion, well, start the discussion, well, not much discussion now, but at testhuddle.com, log in, go to the forum, choose software testing discussion, and then improve your flexibility, etc. Strange that I don't have any feedback, but I wish you all the best with improving your flexibility. I'm sorry for the hiccup during the during the session, but I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope to see you soon, to meet you soon, and I hope you will have improved your flexibility by then. Thank you very much for attending, and I hope to see you live soon.
Thank you very much, Jan Jaap, for that presentation, and thank you attendees for turning up for this session. Let me just open my screen here a second now, and I'll just go through one or two slides here. Unfortunately, that's the third and final session as part of our Agile series, but we have another Agile webinar here that's available for you to view. If you go to the resource section on Test Huddle, you will see this webinar here. It's on continuous performance testing with Neoload. And the next webinar that we will be hosting here is on cloud testing, and that will be with Jonathan Wright of Hitachi Consulting. And he'll be presenting testing in the cloud on Monday, the 27th of April at 2 p.m. And finally, the program for the Eurostar Conference 2015 will be announced on Thursday, the 9th of April. So make sure you add that date to your calendar to find out what amazing sessions we have lined up and what speakers we have and social events and everything. So it's going to be really exciting. So check that out on the Eurostar website. Now it's time to head across to Test Huddle, where we can have a look at your feedback and just see what questions you have for Jan Jaap. Let me share with you one more time the link here. There you go. That link will bring you into the discussion, or alternatively, if you Google testhuddle.com and just click on the slider there for the Jan Jaap discussion, it'll bring you right in. Thank you once again, Jan Jaap, for today's presentation. The webinar is now over. We shall see you all shortly.
Okay. Thank you very much, Darag.